mentioned Paulo County. You mentioned something in there, strings. Since this money is not coming directly from our towns and communities, what strings come along with when you commit to a project and take money from the federal government? Because in many instances, strings do come with it. You have to maintain certain things, the environmental things. There's buffer zones that may go out from this. There's a lot of unknown factors, and you said it yourself, many strings. Look how many departments we have sitting there. Look how many groups we have sitting there. This is a concern. We can do this in our town. I mean, $26,000 a mile to put some stone dust down is a lot of money. I'm sure everybody in here knows somebody in construction that can do that a lot cheaper. So where did all that come up? Is it the research and development? Is it all the different departments that are now involved in this with the strings?
Yeah, I'm going to have Mark and Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It is a good question. I'm happy to talk to you at length. I could probably bore you for hours with certain information. But to answer your question, for example, the federal government provides 80%. One of the strings is somebody else has to pay for the 20%. And in this,
that's our tax dollars, so it does come from us.
correct. And in this case, the 20% is coming from the state of Connecticut.
Who is broke.
But they
And, you know, one more thing, you take some of this land that comes off the tax rolls. Now, when that land comes off the tax rolls, because it gets donated to this, that's less money for our towns to work with.
The land something is donated, it's already owned by the state.
I know, but there's buffer zones and you know, then there's future expansion and it doesn't stop. Because other people control it. It doesn't stop. The answer is it doesn't. Okay, go ahead, finish, please.
So that's an example of one. The other ones are obviously environmental permitting. When federal money is used, a higher standard of environmental permitting is needed, as opposed to if it was just completely state funded or completely locally funded, as an example. So I don't know if that answers what you were getting at, but those are certain things that happen.
Yeah, which is more strings and guidelines, however.
Guidance and you have structure and all for environmental protection in that particular case, yeah.
Yeah, so people should know in their town, that's control you no longer have. That once you sign on to, you are locked into whatever they set, and that could be buffer zones, whatever. Once you sign on to any of these packages, you're locked in your town.
That's right. For example, if you exceed 5,000 square feet of wetland impact, let's say, and we're not doing that because this is a rail bed that's not classified as wetland. But if you were, and you're using federal money, that comes with certain procedures you have to follow, you're right.
Yeah, so be careful. Just think about it. Your kids are going to use your land someday.
Ma'am? Yes, ma'am?
My name is Lisa Napolitano, I'm from Columbia. Didn't realize this was just this, but there's in Columbia too. And I love the airline tracks. I love to walk. I do have a question. You said this meeting was for authorization, and who is authorizing it? And you said they have to do it in the fall, and I'd be curious what that means. And I would be curious where the pot of money came from. I'm sure it wasn't a leprechaun. And map 21, those were all words that you kind of threw out there, and I'm just curious what all those go to.
Okay, map 21 is the federal legislation that provides this funding. So it's Federal Transportation Act that provides this funding to the state that we're going to use for this project.
Okay.
And the
So
project
where
is
did that come from? The pot of money come from?
the federal transportation
Okay, so taxpayer
funds.
dollars.
Oh, taxpayer dollars. All of these funds are taxpayer dollars. Yep, federal, yep.
And then about the authorization and having to do it in the fall. What's that timing
Um,
about? Who is the authorizers?
Well, the state is. It's the state of Connecticut. Again, I gotta get back to this. State property owned by the state, and the state authorizes it. They're holding and conducting these public meetings, public forums to get feedback from the citizens in regards to the trail going through because it is state property. And this is part of one of the regulatory processes we have to follow, like the strings you call that are attached. This is something we need to follow.
I do have one more point. I also used to spend, when I actually had a life and we had time, we used to spend quite a bit of money and go up to northwestern Massachusetts and use ATV trails that ATV registration paid for, ATV clubs maintained, and there was tremendous amount of tourism dollars. So my point here is that maybe we should think about maybe bringing some of those tourism dollars and doing trails that are for them. And maybe people who use these trails should be asked pay for them, because if there's even 5% of the population that actually gets out on them and uses them, I'd be surprised. And they are the people that should be funding it. And if I want to use it, I would be willing to fund it. If it's, you know, a pass that I use to go and walk it, I'm good with that. But I think the people that use the trails should be paying for them.
These are public lands, these are open to the public.
I'm talking about the maintenance factor. There's maintenance that goes with it.
Yes, ma'am?